Today is September 12th, 2022, Monday. I was going to record yesterday, but things happened. It's life. What do you expect? So, last time I talked about the surveillance state. But this time I wanted to talk about law enforcement and how AI-controlled robots could assist with that to make it safer for both the police and the public. But before I really get into that, since this is obviously a very heated topic, at least in our current culture, I'll make something clear without being overly political if I can. Police officers are human too. You know, you got good ones, you got bad ones. The goal of these, integrating AI and robotics with law enforcement is to help the good cops and hinder the bad ones. So whatever you think currently of law enforcement and how they act, the idea here is to make sure that they can perform their job to what they should be doing, and give better outcomes to the public when they have to interact with them, for whatever reason that may be. To really understand that, you first got to ask, what is the goal of law enforcement itself? Their slogan in most cases is to protect and serve, at least in the U.S. I'm sure around the world there's other slogans too, but and there's obviously a lot different mindsets on what law enforcement should do. But with the idea of they have to be protecting. So when you're law enforcement and you're protecting, the question is, who are you protecting? Well, to put it bluntly, you're protecting the public from itself, or rather citizens from other citizens. So the whole idea is to prevent as much harm as possible. At least that's the idealistic, view of what law enforcement should be. So how would AI and robots help law enforcement achieve that goal? Well, first they have to be in the same mindset. So there'd be a number of rules that have to be on top of whatever normal rules for robots and AI, based on the morality that I've done in previous videos. First off, they should be used as tools only. They shouldn't be making judgment calls on if someone needs to be arrested or needs to be ticketed for an offense. That should be left up to the law enforcement individual, because they're the ones that are going to have more the human experience, let's say, to understand when they should let someone go, when they should give someone a warning, and all those different things. If we have an AI making absolute judgments all the time about that kind of stuff, it get very chaotic very quickly. And frankly, as I said before, humans should be governing humans, not AI. Second, they should have no lethal weapons at all. Less than lethal is actually the term they use in the law enforcement community for things like mace, tasers, things along those lines. So if for whatever reason the AI or robot needs to have some kind of weapon of some sort, it has to be a less than lethal, and that's the only thing they would get. Because remember, the mindset of this is to make sure that law enforcement has a tool to preserve life, not to take it. Now, next would be you'd have to have everything clearly visible and labeled. So if there's a police drone of some sort hovering in the sky to assist with the interaction, it needs to have some kind of lighting on it, some kind of, notification so people know it's a law enforcement, device of some sort. And this is for, the protection of others, as well as, to understand where it is and, for clear transparency. And lastly, all data recorded by any of these AI or robots in these interactions, it should be given a copy of all that information to whoever you're interacting with. So if there's someone who gets, pulled over by a speeding ticket, for example, and there's a AI robot that happens to be, able to record certain parts of that interaction, you should, as a citizen, get a copy of all that data for your own records at all times, regardless of the outcome of that interaction. And this is, for transparency. So if there is any kind of, if there's any kind of misdoings or misbehavior by the police officer, that can easily be, given as evidence or presented to something as evidence. So the next question is like, what kind of examples of the tools that an AI could provide with the help of robotics to their law enforcement for this kind of interactions with these kind of tools? Well, let's go for the first example. Let's say a speeding ticket, something real simple, something that happens a lot, actually. Most of the time, it's without incident. It's just, cop goes up to him, talks to the driver, either gives them a warning or gives them a ticket, and they go on their way. Obviously, there are some that don't end that way, but, again, I don't want to get into politics or, the bad situations that a lot of us see nowadays. But how could an AI help with this? Well, just an idea, but when the police car stops someone, a drone could come out and literally land on, say, the windshield and give it a visual inside the car to make sure they're not having a weapon. This also allows so the police officer at that point would be able to understand and know the situation before he gets to the actual window of the car. This would help easing their tensions because, on the flip side of the equation here, when you're a cop and you're walking up to a car, you don't know if someone is hiding a weapon in there and is going to, harm you in some way, or if they're just going to be a normal citizen. And do the interaction as they should. So that needs, that could definitely help ease tension, so to speak, for the more aggressive, more cops in that sense. Also, let's say more of a hostile situation. I won't say exactly what kind of situation it is because YouTube, might, downrank it, even though no one's seeing the videos right now, but that's beside the point. Don't want to, feed the beast there. Let's say there's an active hostile person inside of, a public area. You could have a set of drone swarm. To understand, people don't know, drone swarmers literally have like a whole bunch of little tiny drones that will come in and do an objective, do a task. In this case, it could be something as simple as, the drone swarm goes into an area looking for any kind of weapon, like a gun of some sort, or someone who has one, and then use a less than lethal option to say, for example, a mace or a taser, or maybe something to target the actual weapon itself. Some kind of adhesive that would get on the trigger mechanism or something, some other part of the weapon itself to make it harder or impossible to handle. This would allow other law enforcement to move in without as much threat to their well-being to then take care of the situation. Another idea would be to have a drone camera itself. So let's say you're in the middle of a stop interaction with the public in some way. Say you're dealing with talking to a homeless person who's drunk, has been trespassing. They can have, instead of having just the body cams, which sometimes can make it hard to really see what's going on, you could have a drone that's above and bird's eye view to give a better visual of everything going on. So, if an event does happen or an incident does happen, there's better understanding of the whole situation. Or maybe even, that drone could also maybe help with someone who's resisting arrest. Instead of having the police officer using lethal force, they could use a less than lethal force. So, they see the cop struggling, they see, violent interaction. Maybe the drone could swing in and use a taser on that person who's resisting arrest, or a mace or something. So, kind of a preventative measure to help it not getting to that lethal point. These kind of tools could easily be implemented if you had the proper AI to be able to identify those situations. So now, would they be perfect? No. And this is why you'd actually have to do a lot of testing to make sure it helps. But again, the whole point of these is to prevent the police interaction from getting to the point where there is physical or lethal harm to a citizen. So if the mindset is that, and we put enough balances and checks in place to make sure those tools can't be used and abused by law enforcement, then it could be a good thing to add to a police department itself to help with their law enforcement, to not only keep the citizens safe, but also to keep the law enforcement officers safe as well. And just, again, this is just more of ideas that could possibly be out there, given the right development of the tool. So in general, as I said before, this is a very hot topic to a lot of people, but at the end of the day, law enforcement is going to happen one way or another, whether it be vigilante or by organized government group. So I would rather be in a situation where law enforcement has more options to prevent harm and death than to be in a position where they have to resort to that, regardless of what it may be. And of course, making sure that there's transparency is even a bigger concern, because that way the bad cops can't get away with bad actions, and the good cops can, be more of an example and more of a norm rather than a rare occurrence, at least to some people's eyes. So that's pretty much it for a law enforcement side of things. So the only real kind of AI left would be the military. And that one's kind of scary. In fact, it's extremely scary, but at the same time, it has to be talked about because it will happen. In fact, it's kind of already happening in some cases. But we'll get to that next week. Either next week or the week after. I'm kind of going every other week at this point because of life concerns. But that's beside the point. Till next time, be safe out there.